Great to have you here. We are going to be recording today's session for those who can't join us because there are quite a few who can't in different parts of the world. So we appreciate your agreement to join. So your 2040 was started about 5 years ago, and since we started in Lux, and now we've been in La Punt for quite a few years. And since the day one in La Punt, and Ken, you can show that slide, we have had the absolute pleasure of having James as being our chef. In 2040 is a community which is focused on we call courageous futures and trying to how we can imagine, co-imagine the future we wish will evolve given the challenges which we know we're facing around the world, especially with climate change and now the new challenges which have emerged in the past year, and continuing to hold that light, that candle in this dark tunnel, and how we really focus on that strength and helping each other find that resonance. And then James was really quite wonderful because, we came to him, and I think Joya might have introduced us to James and said, James, um, how about doing all the catering? Because James he runs the Corona Samurai Hotel and fine dining. You can tell us more about that. He is an absolute master there. And I said, but he said, sure. And I said, but it has to be vegan. And he kind of looked at me and he said, okay. And we'll hear more about that in just a minute. It has been an absolute joy to see what he and his team have been able to do with us. It's a pleasure to have interacted with him, and he's just a really fantastic guy. So James, you're on their call, and welcome to the online community of Your 2040.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite, first of all.
Well, we,
Amazing.
well,
Really
we,
looking forward to it.
well, thank you. So if we look back over the years, it started in 2023, then we did 2024. Kenny, I think we got the next slide. What's the next slide? Right. And each year was a slightly different, right?
Hmm.
Right. But each year was amazing. And the thing I loved was when we had vegans who came to us and just said this was the best food we have ever eaten, ever. And I tell you, that is an incredible compliment because we have in our literally few thousand folks in our community some very hardcore vegans who come from different parts of the world, and each one had said this to me. And I think anyone who is not a vegan would not even know that eating, we were eating vegan food. It was just incredible. It was just good food, right? This is the thing. You make just amazingly good food. So, what I'd like for you to do is tell us a little bit about yourself and the Corona Hotel and how you saw 2040.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, I mean, I grew up in England, just south of London, and did my apprenticeship in a great restaurant, a Michelin-starred restaurant. And I quickly realized I wanted to travel, and I didn't want to stay in my hometown. So I moved from there to Canada, and then from Canada to Switzerland for 7 years. Uh, French part and German part, and then on to Austria, Cambodia, Hong Kong, and then back to Switzerland again. That's a very brief introduction to how I learned cooking and how I came to be quite passionate about what I do. And
Oh, wait, but before we go to the Corona, why did you want to become a chef? Because,
I think, yeah, I mean, we're going to touch on something else here because I wanted to do something completely different.
huh,
I basically worked in a restaurant just to earn money to travel with, basically. And that
hmm,
restaurant happened to have a Michelin star, and I worked as a waiter there. And I kind of saw how the chefs work. And, working with your hands is quite a unique thing to do. And I saw it really as a craft, and I think to
hmm,
to see to see a job as a métier or a craft, you see it in a completely different light, and it inspired me. And I said to
hmm.
my parents, I don't want to study architecture at university. I want to be a chef. which they absolutely didn't understand, of course. But yeah, it took them a few years to really realize, okay, this is what he wants to do. He's passionate about this.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of that's all you really want for your kids, isn't it? You want them to do something that they're passionate about, and generally they will do that well. You know, if they get forced into doing something that they don't want to do, then they won't do it well. So they realized that very quickly that that was a passion of mine and that was sort of my calling. And yeah, I decided I wanted to be like a bit of a culinary nomad and go and travel. And, you know, even I didn't speak French when I started in the French part, and I didn't speak
Hmm.
German when I started in the German part. And it's a really a remarkable industry to work in because you work with your hands. You do something that others can't do. And if you can't speak the language, that's kind of allowed.
Hmm.
So the communication in that sort of
Hmm.
sense was taken care of by the way you work, actually,
Because
which is
I
very
guess because
different.
because you could someone could show you what to do rather than tell you what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
So it's very different
Huh.
to banking or architecture. You know, you have different rules and regulations in every country. So
Hmm.
if you're a banker in London and you want to go to America, then you know you have to learn the system new, basically.
Sure.
And I think for me, I realized quite quickly that you know you can literally just go anywhere, and you don't have to. You know, the general rules of food hygiene are the same everywhere. You know,
Hmm.
and I learned, luckily enough, in a very good environment where we were always very careful, and that stood me in good stead. You know, so
Hmm.
as soon as I had the basics, then it was kind of like, okay, the world is really your oyster, and you can get a lot out of this industry. And that's why
Hmm.
I kind of try and say to the younger chefs as well, you know, you can literally go anywhere. You can learn. You can
Hmm.
go to Argentina and cook if you want to. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the beautiful
especially
thing about it.
exactly. That's great. I never thought about that way. I'm not a very good chef, so it's just, that's why I love your food so much. So we're gonna skip it. We're gonna skip a middle part. Tell us about the Corona, because this is where you are now. Tell us about that. This is where we got to know each other, and so then we'll talk about the in between after you tell us about the Corona.
Yeah, so I was in Hong Kong before the corona came along, and my wife and I we were looking at moving back to Europe. COVID time in Hong Kong was quite complicated. We had 21 days of quarantine to contend with, and having young kids, it was difficult to see the family. So we decided Europe is the place to be. And Switzerland, I have the network from the first time I worked in Switzerland, 7 years, and someone just happened to call and say, yeah, you need to look at this hotel in Engadine. It's a very cool project with very cool owners who will be very supportive, and that's how the dialogue first started with the Kurti family
Hmm.
and Bettina Plattner, the Verwaltungsrats, the chair lady.
Hmm.
And I very quickly realized that just the dynamic was right. And, you know,
Hmm.
without looking at the hotel, we made the plunge and said, yeah, we're going to do it. And I think
So,
sometimes when the chemistry feels right, then it's a good thing to just
so as
go
I
for it
understand,
sometimes.
the folklore is that you were given a tour of the hotel and the kitchen with an iPad.
Yes, yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
so
we couldn't come and see it because it was 21 days of quarantine. I had to
yeah.
then to give my notice if we liked it, so there was no way we could come. So that was the only way, and you know, sometimes you know you just have to have a little bit of luck sometimes, and that's exactly what we had this time.
Well,
Yeah,
but luck and trust. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, and trust in
yeah.
yourself, trust in what you heard, trust in what you saw. And it reminds me, all of us, at those times in COVID times, and it was not that long ago. And to think what you had to make truly a life-changing decision
Mhm.
at a moment of the shutdown and those contexts to go back for us all to think about that and for you to be able to go from Hong Kong to here. So what did you love about Hong Kong?
I love the mix of everything. So I mean, my wife is half Thai, half Swiss, and I'm from the UK, and we just absolutely loved the dynamic feeling of the city and how it's just this melting pot between Asia and Europe
Hmm.
altogether in terms of culture, cleanliness, the dirty side of Asia as well. You can also find, and I, for me, the food is obviously a huge pull as well. It has, one of the most dynamic food scenes in the world as well.
Yeah. It's quite fresh, actually, 'cause I lived in Hong Kong too, and I mean, I was quite amazed that the food didn't come out of freezers.
No, no, and there's a lot. It's actually really interesting. There's a lot of um, farmers who are starting up in the new territories, which is the other side, towards Shenzhen side actually, and they're doing some really good work now because some of the vegetables that you can get in Hong Kong, a lot is obviously from China, incredibly cheap, and then also you don't really know where it's coming from. It's very difficult to see the supply chain and where the farmers and to really source your products properly. So then that's why
Mm.
people have started in Hong Kong to grow their own. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but so when I think of Hong Kong, I think of density, I think of high rises. This is like the ultimate urban world. And then
Hmm.
you and your family got into a 747 or a 380, flew over to Switzerland, got in a little train, came up and landed in La Punt Chamwesh,
Hmm.
which is so opposite to
Yeah,
everything that you had 2 days before.
exactly. Yeah. It was crazy. And for our daughter, she really only spoke English at the beginning, and then she integrated herself very quickly in and learned German within 6 months. But the feeling for us, I mean, I think it's always the same. I've always been a big believer in finding the right balance. So between work and play, really, I suppose, is your private life and your work challenges need to be in balance. And I find for us, even we are living in a very small town, but when you have a challenge in front of you, something that you really enjoy to do, then that doesn't really matter. I mean, you can always every place you live in life will have positives and negatives, and it's all about trying to find the right balance and then creating or trying to find the things that you miss in the times where you have holidays. So we always have city holidays instead of beach holidays.
That's really wonderful. I think that's really great. And I think it's also a good, interesting lesson. So, as a chef, I can imagine that you bring lessons with you from each place that you have been, right? There's life lessons, but perhaps like chef lessons. And maybe there are not many of us on the call who have been able to. Well, that's not true. There are many of us who are here on this call right now who I know have experienced many cultures and bring
Mhm,
different
mhm.
things with us. What did you bring with you from Hong Kong that you brought into La Punt, into Krone?
I mean, I think every place I've worked actually has always had different food cultures, and I think specifically from Hong Kong, I would say like I fell in love with Sichuan food actually in Hong Kong.
Hmm,
And
interesting.
Szechuan pepper is a very interesting spice, and we actually have planted 4 trees in the garden in La Punt because
Huh,
Szechuan province is above 1,000 meters as well, and has to cope with the early frosts of in autumn, the early frosts, and then it has a very short vegetation time as well. So, and this is very similar to climate to La Punt. So we thought we'd try it, and it works very well. We had last year the first proper harvest, um, and
cool.
I think that's just the flavors of Hong Kong and the textures and things that we experience there that we think could work here as well in it just
Hmm.
done in a slightly different way because ultimately you can talk about regional food as much as you like, but if there's 2 meters of snow in front of the door, then it needs to be believable as well. You can't just say, oh, we're cooking regional and seasonal, but in winter is our busiest season as well. So we need to grow things
Yeah,
in the summer which we can preserve. We need to take
yeah,
ideas as well from and different products and spices from other places, try and grow it here, which we've done in our garden, to different flavor profiles as well. We have mioga, we have ginger, we have
Hmm.
lemongrass.
Hmm.
We're trying every season new things as well. So I think it's very important for us that we take the ideas and the spices and the seasonings of the places where I've worked before and try to plant them here. And it's so far it's working really well.
That's really cool, James. I didn't know that. And that's really, I think it's quite fascinating. You said they're about the same elevation. It's a very similar type of climate, different cultures, but now with change, who knows? Because you also have another restaurant. You have the fine dining restaurant where you can sort of play and experiment, and you have the other restaurant, the Faux
Mhm.
Flama, which is slightly different, if I'm not mistaken. That's like much
Yeah.
more Romansch, more local. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think it's really important for us to differentiate between the two brands as well, because we have a fine dining restaurant is, if you're on a ski holiday or any type of holiday, you don't want to eat 6 courses or 9 courses every night. So you want to save maybe 2 nights like that, and then you
Mm,
have a little bit of diversity in the offering is
mm.
really important for the guests. So that's why we try to open the second restaurant, which kind of complements the offering that we have in the Krona. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that, and I think this is also, it speaks to you and what you like to do. It's like a bit of experimentation and then a bit of comfort food, right? This
Yeah.
is sort of,
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of
exactly.
cool. So you have two children you mentioned.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And what have they taught you? How have they influenced your work as a chef?
I think, to be honest, kids, I think those who have kids on the call will all be able to vouch for this, that they just can learn so fast. They can adapt so quickly, and I think in this changing world of ours, we need to adapt quicker. And I think as you grow up, it's much harder to adapt, much harder to sort of change your ways. And I noticed the kids they fit in so quickly, and now
Hmm.
they speak Romansh, they speak German, they speak
Hmm.
English, and they speak High German with their mother. So it's just amazing. I think that's an inspiration, and you always want to kind of teach your kids that everything is possible, but actually they already can do that.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really, it's a good lesson. That's a good lesson for us. I'll speak for myself. It's a good lesson for me as an elder to remember. Right? This is really, really good. And so, we've known each other for about 3 years now. And how's your 2040 influenced you in your work?
yeah. I think as you first mentioned, I think when you came and said, "Oh, it needs to be for 120 people and everything vegan," I think initially I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be tricky." But we kind of I like to have in my work I like to have like constraints, and I like to kind of challenge myself as well. So I feel
Mhm.
like things like this are actually really positive because it elevates your creativity as well. Because as soon as you have no constraints or no limitations in the products you can use, then the creativity is more like, okay, then you just end up cooking with caviar and the best langoustines and things like that. But as soon as you try and focus on a concept, focus on what is this about that we're trying to communicate through this offering, through this event with your 2040, and that was obviously sustainability, and through that I found that the team as well, they became more creative. So we had like
Mhm.
brainstorming sessions where we would talk about,
Hmm.
okay, well, how are we going to do this? Because
Hmm.
it's going to be a challenge, but how are we going to do it? And we
Hmm.
we kind of through the team and through the inspiration of the team, we kind of found a way of doing themes. So we would do. I
Hmm.
think we did on the first year we did one Mexican vegan day and one Thai and one like Middle Eastern type themes. So
Mhm.
and they all actually lend themselves fairly well with a bit of adaptability into being vegan. So I think it all of these things I think drive creativity, and for us in our business, in our day-to-day business, creativity is so important to stay ahead of the curve and to stay innovative.
Yeah, and I love that. Thank you, James, especially when you mentioned constraints, because constraints, also as a designer, the worst thing you can ever have is a white sheet of paper, right? Because it's just awful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you want someone to put a line on it or something, and you just please give me something to start with, right?
yeah.
But as a chef, I consider you a designer, right? I really do. You design what we're going to taste. You design how it's going to look. Your dishes
Mm.
are beautiful. How do you go? What's your process in designing what we're going to experience?
I think first of all, it starts kind of with like a philosophy. So you have a philosophy, and that would be for us is kind of a regional theme. But the soy marai, the word soy marai is like the traveler. The
Ah,
Corona itself is an old coaching inn.
mm-hmm,
So it sits between two mountain passes, and basically, yeah, but many years ago, people used to come over the passes on horseback with. We kind of were very excited about the Corona because we can see the rich history that it has and see what happened in these small rooms every evening. We kind
hmm,
of, with a bit of imagination, we kind of worked out, okay, then maybe they were coming over lemons from Italy or from products from Venice, maybe on their way to
hmm,
Zurich, and we kind of found that very exciting. That kind of the
hmm,
history of the building, and we wanted to kind of play off Soimarai, the traveler, in the main branding of the product or the hotel. Um, so we found that incredibly important. And then, sorry, I've forgotten where we were going before that bit.
What's
Ah,
your
yeah. So
design process?
sorry.
Yeah.
So the
Oh, that's
philosophy is
cool. That was really cool too, where you went with that. That was
I
awesome.
got
But
I
yeah,
went off
that's
on
all
a
right.
tangent there.
Yeah, that's good.
You have to pull me back in sometimes. No, so the philosophy is where you start, I think. So and these constraints. And then the dishes themselves, I try to make in a very interesting flavor profile. So then it goes into salty, sweet, sour, spicy. So bitter, you have bitter salads and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So the flavor profile of the dishes is also very important. And then
Mm-hmm.
it goes into texture. So then you have like creamy, crispy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they're kind of the dishes kind of the idea is they can come from products or can come from people, often like
Hmm.
farmers who we call the modern day travelers, the modern day soimer. We have a very cool guy called Salvador Mexican, but he plants food products that he loves in Mexico, in Switzerland. So he
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
lemongrass, aloe vera,
Hmm.
an unbelievable amount of chilies, like
Hmm.
and stuff.
Hmm.
And I think that's really interesting. We like to obviously take inspiration from the products, but the people as well behind the products is
Cool.
for us really important.
Yeah.
From there goes back into the kind of framework, the flavor.
Okay. So there's a real, I mean, there's a method to your madness, right? It's just
Very,
like you just don't wake up and say, I'm like, I'm going to make corn ice cream today, right?
that does happen too. That
Well,
does happen too. Yeah.
if anyone does have a chance to have the corn ice cream, it is absolutely amazing. Growing up in the American Corn Belt, I never in my life thought I would have corn ice cream that was so incredible. So,
Mhm.
so James, I know one thing you're trying is a challenge in Engadine to go completely seasonal because you said sometimes you have 2 meters of snow, not a whole lot grows then.
Yeah.
You don't want to eat beets every
Um,
day, you know.
no, yeah, and but I think for us here, the summer and the autumn are the most beautiful seasons. I think obviously spring with the fresh flowers that come out, that's brilliant too. But at our elevation, the mountain flowers really come in what I would call summer, so July. So a bit in if you go down in meters, we're 1,600 meters, so it takes time for the snow to to go to melt and then the flowers to come. So we preserve a
Hmm.
lot. So we make all of the
Hmm.
marmalades and pickles and things like that during the summer
Mm-hmm.
months and autumn. Even if it's mushrooms, we pickle mushrooms to last us until the following year. It's a very important part
Wow.
of how we work. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
preservation.
That's
Mm,
really cool. I love that because I think of the changes which are happening around us, and you're up there living in the change in the mountains and growing, and they're changing, the world changing around us. What inspires you in addition to your children? I know they do.
mm.
What inspires you? Where does James go for inspiration?
The industry is very dynamic as well. I think there's some brilliant chefs across the world which you can draw inspiration on, and I try to eat out as much as I can because it's a really easy way to learn a lot. So
Huh.
last week I
Huh.
went to there was a great Chilean chef in St. Moritz doing a pop-up, and I went with my wife just to check it out, and it was also a fantastic. There's obviously different styles and different flavor profiles, which potentially are not my style, but I learned a lot in philosophy and in terms of presentation and yeah, mainly philosophy actually. He's really
Hmm.
a great chef in that respect.
Hmm.
So I think yeah, from the industry as a whole, and then from the nature as well. I go running a lot, and and what I see when I'm running is also, oh, I need, there's meadowsweet which grows just outside of La Punt, and then I can kind of monitor that when it's ready to be picked and when it's
Hmm.
because it's a very short sweet spot. You have to go when it's exactly in bloom, and
Yeah.
if it's over, then it's no good. So
Hmm.
I kind of monitor when I'm running. I monitor what's going on outside in nature, and then we get the chefs together and we go out all together and get it.
That's a beautiful image, James. Let's let that sit for a minute. Everybody, I mean, seriously, you go running, you're kind of watching what's happening around you at the right
Mm.
time, almost like a hunter. You go and you grab what's there waiting, in
Yeah,
nature.
and when
Yeah.
you said hunting, I go early morning, so I go at like 7 in the morning, and then the hunters are coming back in autumn
Yeah.
with sometimes something draped across their shoulders and stuff. And I think that's
Hmm.
is a very well, it's a very sustainable way of eating meat. If you are going to eat meat, that is one, especially in Switzerland, where it's very nicely controlled and
Yeah.
responsibly. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. So if you go, say, 5, 10 years into the future, what's next for James in, say, 5 or 10 years from now? Because 5 years ago, you were in a whole nother world, right?
Who knows? Yeah, exactly. No, I think so. I mean, in terms of the food and things like that, I think we will evolve. We try to evolve every season. So we have basically on the menu we have one dish which always stays, and that is the pear ravioli. That is a very traditional dish from the region, um, which is for me it's a fantastic representation of where you are. So for me, when I go on holiday to the north of France or something, then I want to have a representation of what I'm eating from the place where I am. I think it needs to match, and that
Yeah.
I find it very important. So, what I didn't particularly like about Hong Kong is that everyone kind of cooks French food, and I
Huh.
found there's one chef who kind of fuses French and Cantonese
Hmm.
cuisine together. And that was for me the most interesting restaurant in Hong Kong because he kind of used French techniques but cooked in a Cantonese style and with Cantonese products. And for me, a restaurant really needs to have a sense of place and a kind of duty to represent the area that it's in. The bean and ravioli will always stay because it's really one of those dishes which is rooted in the region. but the creativity of the other dishes we like to evolve. So
Just keep evolving. Yeah.
we have really like a couple of points, touch points, which are really representative of the region, and then the other dishes are kind of like a little bit provocative and a bit more creative, basically,
Hmm.
to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. So it's again a bit of a balance between the two. Um, but yeah, I think that's from the food
Hmm.
side. That's certainly how we want
Yep.
to evolve, and we also have the in hub, which is a huge project for us, which is coming,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
the food concept at which we will evolve there is really exciting as well. Well, yeah.
I think we'll do another interview on that one. So I think that's really cool. Just let everybody know who's on the call. You will be free for questions in about 5 minutes. So if you have questions for James, you're welcome to pop them in just a few more minutes. 'Cause I want to ask you about that. So I know, James, one of the things that we talked about in the past was you were also looking to find partners in the valley who could also focus on help together focus on more local sourcing, dealing with the changing climate or taking advantage of the changing climate, which is happening. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we actually Joel was one of the speakers at the last 2040 event, and she helps us in the garden. So we have a garden project with a local hotel house in St. Moritz, and with them now we're forming like a foundation basically where
Hmm.
we have three gardens. Um, yeah, one in Madoline, which is the next village, one in Samarden, which is towards St. Moritz, and one in Domleschg, which is a bit further down the mountain, totally different climate. So we can source from these three gardens all of the salad that both hotels need for the whole summer, all of the tomatoes, all of the cucumbers, all of the radishes. And every season we're trying to like try different products out to see if they will work. So last season we tried red cabbage. We planted it a little bit too late, so it was ready for picking after we needed it, which was a bit of a shame. All the guests were gone, so we preserved it that time. But this kind of partnership, I think, is partnership agreement or way of working together is really important because to do that on my own, I just wouldn't have the time to even begin with it.
Hmm.
And now we're looking at there's a very interesting project in Zurich, a guy who has basically he uses aquaponics. So there's different pools of
Hmm.
water in this. It's basically a caravan he has,
Hmm.
and then you can grow different herbs and different salads in this caravan all throughout the year, basically.
Hmm.
And this is something we're looking at into now to see if we can do it in the region where,
Yeah.
like through a partnership that it's like a
Yeah.
licensing agreement that you have to agree to. But if we can get it, if we can all agree to terms, then it will be fantastic. You can
Yeah.
get fresh salad.
Really fantastic, right? To think, as you just indicated, you're looking for partners to kind of help evolve your goals with sustainability and also
Hmm.
being, I wouldn't say self-reliant because we all depend upon each other and depend upon others, but how do you create that ecosystem which allows you to provide this amazing food year round in the most local way possible, right? And as you
Yeah,
said, it,
yeah.
it takes partners. You can't do it by yourself. This is,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think, we have to kind of also have a very open dialogue to the suppliers we have as well. There's certain things like you can see, obviously where the herbs or the salad will come from in the winter, and I think there's certain conversations that they need to be had quite regularly with the suppliers. Like, is it really necessary that we have herbs from Israel in winter rather than maybe Germany or France or somewhere where it's a little bit? I mean, of course not La Punt, but
Sure,
that it's a little bit closer to home.
sure.
So those conversations also need to be had with partners and
Yeah,
suppliers to keep
yeah,
them kind of on the ball. I feel. Yeah.
yeah. That's really great. I think one of the things that COVID showed us when you look, there's a lot. a lot of things quite close.
Yeah.
This was, I think, a lot of folks discovered that in COVID.
Mm.
So I got a question before I open it for questions. For I could keep talking for hours, but was there a moment when you were just like, okay, I want to be an architect. Screw this. This is crazy. I don't want to be a chef. I want. Ah.
Yes, yes, but I think those moments have never lasted more than half an hour or an hour. I think you can I can get emotional and like everyone, you
Sure.
have this job, that's for sure, and then occasionally it gets the better of you, but it doesn't last more than half an hour, to be honest. I would never change now, and I don't regret my choices. I think it's a fantastic, but or every young person, but it's kind of one of those things where you can only do it if you love it. There's
Sure.
no point in doing it if you're kind of unsure. You can
Hmm.
only do it if you love it, and everything else is not worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's a very important lesson. I can only concur with that. And what I do have one more question. What's the most bizarre food you've ever tried?
It was in Cambodia, called balut, which is like a fertilized duck egg, which is already grown into an embryo, and this is where I draw the line. This is not possible. Disgusting. So and
Oh,
they take the top off and they put soy sauce inside and stir it all around and crush it up and stuff, and then they eat it like. And I've never seen something that, I mean, of course in Thailand and stuff you see the skull eat, but this one was certainly the most shocked I've been, I think. This
yeah.
one.
Well, okay. That kind of got my stomach, and I think
Yeah, definitely.
the I think the weirdest one I had was the Sicilian, which were crawling around. That was sort of my limit, where I was like, yeah, I love stinky cheese, but that's one step too far. Yeah.
Somewhere you need to try to draw the line. Huh?
Yeah, yeah, we all have that. So, James, I could keep talking. And of those who are with us, anyone want to pop one? Martin, does someone have a question? Otherwise, I'm going to keep asking. I got five, six more. Martin, go ahead. Put your hand up or, uh,
I have two questions in the chat. I'm happy to ask on your
Okay,
behalf, but I think he's coming off mute. Yeah.
oh, there you go, Martin. Martin, go ahead and pop the question.
okay, James, you seem so calm, and on the other side, I forgot the name, but which was a great movie showing the stress that the chefs have, and especially on the level that you're cooking, and everything has to be on time all together. How to deal with stress?
I think that's something I learned later on in life, like many. I think when I was 26, to like my very first head chef job, for the first time, really, you're the one who's responsible. And then I potentially didn't deal with it so well, but with time, I really found out that, especially, you just can't treat people like that anymore, and you shouldn't. We look for in business, uh, forming a team, keeping the team together, and evolving together as a team. And I found, if you don't treat people correctly, they just won't stay. No matter how good a chef you are, bring your dishes can be, if you're the human mentally the human side of things is not correct, they just won't accept that, and quite rightly as well. I think it's very, I mean, it's even in the news at the moment about Noma. It's a huge thing. They're just opening a pop-up in LA, and there's a lot of noise going around about how he treated his staff in the past. And I think, it will always come back to bite you, things like that. If a certain amount of transparency, and you need to do the right thing, like in every business.
Mhm. And now, let me just, it's a great question, Martin, but And you have very high expectations. Your fine dining is absolutely first class.
Mm.
And how do you help make sure that
I
everybody in
think.
the team
Mm,
has that little tiny bit of soup is on that
yeah.
plate where you think it should be?
I think that's a combination of leading by example and being able to keep the atmosphere positive. So
Hmm.
I really feel like if I wasn't in the kitchen every night, off piece basically, and that's not because they're not good or we have great members of staff. It's just the discipline and the control of the atmosphere is probably one of the most difficult things I think, and I've only learned how to do that. I would say it's like an ecosystem. If someone is scared or something, then they cannot perform to the same
Interesting.
level. And if they're scared or they're afraid to say something, then they cannot bring um, it can't evolve. You need it's always like this trade-off between discipline and creativity, and the atmosphere you want to create in the kitchen is kind of a sweet spot between the two. It cannot work without discipline, but you also need creativity and you need people to be able to give their honest feedback as well, because ultimately we taste the dishes before the guests do. We
Hmm.
taste everything before the guests do, and if it works well together and someone else doesn't, ultimately it's
Hmm.
subjective. It's not something that I define the dishes and then all the guests must like these dishes. Do you know what I mean? It's subjective. It's Some people won't like that combination, and it's very important to listen to the people around you, I think, and
Yeah,
we really take care of the atmosphere that we have in the kitchen.
yeah,
And the stress side of things explode, but I also know that, and I've learned how to deal with it through sport and through like just different channels to get that stress out a little bit.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think
Hope
that's a
that
really
answered your question, Martin.
great answer. Great answer and very correct. And every level, I have to say, for me, I agree with you, and it's hard
Mm.
sometimes to
Yeah.
to, to maintain that. So, great question here is, and is how do you keep the passion for being a chef alive? I mean, all of you know what, all of us in 2040, one of the things I really value about coming together in the summertime is everyone in the community is very passionate, very different domains. Martin, his Stiftung, and Matt, all of us, and Kenny. I mean, every once we need to get our batteries recharged. It gets exhausting, and sometimes you just kind of
Yeah.
going, oh
Mm.
God. Ah.
Yeah.
So,
I
what do
think
you do?
we're
What do you do?
very lucky here in the respect that we have two pauses really in the year. So we have after the end of the winter season now, end of March, we close for a period, and then we close in November as well. So we have two kind of breaks in a year. So I try to use them as like a bit of creative time as well. Like this is where we go to the cities and we check out what's going on in Bangkok or what's going on in and I think I'm very lucky really because I consider myself one of the luckiest people because the passion is there and it kind of feeds itself. And I think, I mean, I just think that's luck. I think, if you're lucky enough to find something that you love, then it really kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It kind of just keeps getting better.
Yeah, Rashmi, you were that was yeah, yeah.
You
I
have
agree.
one more question that's a little buried from Jorg. Would you like to ask it live?
Yeah, thank you. It's just many of us, I assume, are the greatest chefs ourselves. So what tips do you have for healthy and maybe easy eating and cooking?
Great question,
Yeah.
Jörg. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think to add on to your question, you've all got busy lives as well. No one's got more than 15 minutes to cook dinner, you know. So I think the time constraints you have and the product, it is challenging. I mean, I think, you know, and my kids have just gone to Thailand, for example, with my wife for a few weeks or months, and now I'm cooking for myself on my days off. So it's kind of like, this is a pain, you know. So to cook healthily for yourself, it is a challenge. My go-to is what I do a lot is I just do eat roast vegetables. I know it sounds really boring, but I eat roasted vegetables a lot. So what I do is I get a big bowl. It's about the same size. Put them in a bowl, season them with olive oil, salt, and maybe paprika and a few spices. And then I put the oven on very hot, and I kind of put them all in together, roast them very hot, so that, you know, not al dente. And for me, that's just a really good reset meal, you know. I think everyone needs to find a reset meal, or
That's
maybe a place where you can get a reset meal.
and a great answer because James, that's something that all of us can do. You know, we have an oven. What temperature do you put it on? I mean, I actually have a detail
Yeah,
here.
like
So
190, really hot. So
190,
you
how
want to,
long?
yeah, really pretty. How small you cut the vegetables. If you're cutting pieces like this, maybe you need 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also something you can very easily prepare the morning, or when you come home from night. At night, you just turn the oven on and throw everything in. Nice, but yeah, I find that's something, and we at home we would eat that then with like some spicy sauces, to be honest, like some sambal oleg, things like that. Vegetables and sambal oleg, you can't go wrong.
That's really great. So, Sarah, you have a really great question here. Why don't you go and pop it?
Hi, thank you. I'm also really interested in farming veggies that have in terms of nutrition, or for example, that can be fitted to somebody who has diabetes, for example. There's very much out there. But I just wonder, those are maybe things that are not so commonly known, but I'm sure that chefs know their veggies all over the world. But just to introduce it, like to make a market for it, if you have a farm and you do it, do you think you can go to restaurants and just basically give a bit of a workshop and say like, hey, we have these yam roots or whatever. Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
something that chefs would be open to, or is that a bit of a red flag to go in there and be like giving creative input?
No, absolutely. You need to go to as many restaurants as you can, because for us actually, especially, you know, there's a certain barrier of entry for farmers to go to posh restaurants, if you like. You know that this is something that it shouldn't be, and for me, it's the nicest thing ever if someone just knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I've got really nice cheese," or "I've got this," or "I've got that," and you know, of course, you need to be also prepared mentally that maybe they don't like it. That's kind of the risk you take. But I think there's nothing better than when they do and they try and present it to you. I think that's, of course, sometimes you will have knockbacks, but I think that's the way forward. And I especially really like to be surprised. Sometimes it's also nice if you call ahead and say, okay, I have 10 minutes of his time. I think that's a great move.
All right. Thank you. That's really
Go
good
for it, Sarah.
insight. Thanks.
So, Sarah, I would take that as an open invitation.
Yeah,
Yes, I am. Writing it
Right?
down.
absolutely.
Good. Like I know there's a few folks on the call who are very interested in farming and sustainable regenerative farming. to help that ecosystem evolve, not just here, but the whole system globally. So on the call, this has been an absolute delight.
Mm.
And I mean it really seriously, James. It's really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of insight into your life, into your passion, into your products, and into your place, which I love. You know that, and I appreciate. And I do hope everyone who's on the call will have a moment, if you have not already experienced the culinary delights of the Corona, then I hope you do have an opportunity within the next few months or year to do that. And you can always join us next year in September, and then we'll be there again. So James, let's give everyone say thank you. And I got a
Thanks,
few more
Chris.
announcements to say. So it's really, really fantastic.
Thanks so
So
much, Chris.
yeah, you're awesome, dude. So just for everybody on the call, as you know, for those who don't know, every second Tuesday of the month, we do have another community call similar to this, different themes, different topics, and we encourage you to sign up to our newsletter, go into the QR code and check in, and then you check in with us and we'll check in with you to do that. And I'm not sure, Emily or Kenny, what's the next, do we have the theme for next week? The next
Next
call?
week, next month, we have some time for this.
Okay.
So we can click ahead, but please register there, and we do launch them monthly. So you'll see the next 2 months available to subscribe now, so you can come join us in great conversations like this. And we'll also promote the next topics and speakers for the next 2 months in the WhatsApp group. So if you need that link, let us know as well, and we will get you in the WhatsApp chat.
Thank you. And the next slide is there's be a talk here in Zurich, if you're in Zurich or nearby, on Tuesday, the 31st of March, entitled Choices. I'll be in conversation with a friend of mine named Aaron Maniam from Singapore. It will be my last day of full-time work at the ETH Zurich. And I'd love to see you there. It's going to be a very interesting evening. I get
So
through
this
without. Go
this
ahead,
talk
Janelle.
is turning the tables, and Chris is in the hot seat being interviewed.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of me doing all the questioning, I'll be doing the questions, and it'll be very emotional for me as well.
And we'll
Then,
also, for anyone in Zurich, we'll have like a kind of pseudo meetup afterwards if you're there.
yeah, for sure. And then we have a bike ride, which I'm super excited to share. The 3rd, 4th, 5th of July. We'll be starting in Davos at the VSL, which is the Avalanche Research Center in Davos, and we'll be driving our bikes over the Flua Pass, coming down into Souche, and going all the way up the Engadine Valley and ending in La Punt with a wonderful meal in the Krone on that evening of the 4th. And it's going to be super, super fun. And we have various stops. So if you're not a super biker, like I am not a super biker, we have different ways in which one can join, but the entire mission here is carbon-free mobility. And so we have a series of stops along the way, just kind of exploring what does carbon-free mobility mean to all of us. And so I'm really excited about it. And that kind of brings us to the last moment, which is the end of today. And like we have another slide. I think that's it. Oh, no, we do have one more slide. Kitty, what's the next slide? Show the next slide. You have the next slide? Kitty, can you show the next slide?
We'll get there.
Go ahead.
All right, we're gonna just make sure
Hurry.
we have the last minute for James as well. If people want to connect with you or learn more or follow your work or hear what's next, anything you want to share with the group. We love working with you. We love eating your amazing food. but anything else you want to share with us?
Ooh, our bandwidth's got
Yeah.
really crazy.
No.
All right. So, whoops, there we go. There we go. That's okay. Anyway, so just to say verbally, really quickly, the gathering for 2026 entitled Beyond the Visible will be on the 3rd through the 6th of September, starting in Pontresina, then moving to La Punt for the weekend. And super excited about that. We're going to there's going to be a different format than what we've had in the past, but it's going to be quite different and very powerful. And I hope you'll join us. We have the podcast Choosing to Matter, which is almost wrapping up for its first season. And that you can be found on all of your favorite podcast listening, whatever you call them. I'm not quite sure. My team will know that, And
Platforms.
platforms. Thank you. And then we will be recording the new season very soon. And I hope you'll be able to join us. And Emily's going to show those right now. And if you're interested in joining us in the Beyond the Visible, from outer space to inner space, it's going to be, people, planet, and place will be conceived from satellites looking down on our planet and everything above ground and below ground. Then we go to inner space, was inside of ourselves, inside of our DNA, inside of our brains and our hearts. And so really it's going to be quite wonderful during the day, including a Pechakucha session with very cool stuff. And that's going to be on the 3rd. So we hope you'll join us. We'll have Jeffersonian dinners or one-on dinners of small groups on the evening of the 3rd with the speakers all over Pontresina and La Punt. And then we continue with the program. We can tell you more about that as it goes. But it's super exciting. As I said, for those who've joined us every year, we're changing it a bit. And so it's going to be, because basically La Punt's going to be a building site, it's going to be. So we're moving up to Rondo in Pontresina into the beautiful center. And if all goes well, we're going to have a very, 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 very special musician sharing a piece of music, which he'll be creating just for us. A pianist. So that's going to be a world first, which would be really cool. So that's that. And the next slide is the podcast. They're really wonderful little mini biographies that Janelle calls them, and Kenny and the team is really wonderful. I love them. It's such a privilege to do them, just like we've done with James and with some other individuals. And then the next slide is, if you'd like to hang out for a little bit, very, very happy to hang out for the next 15, 20 minutes and just chat if you'd like to. And I promise not to drop the mic. There we go. So with that, I'd like to thank Emily and thank Kinney for putting it together, and Janelle for your constant support, and all those who have supported your 2040 in the past and the present and the future. So with that, I wish you and James, thanks, buddy, you're a hero. Wish all of you a wonderful, wonderful day. Drink lots of water, eat an apple, and walk a lot. Ciao, everybody. See you.
Cheers, guys.